This is the FRC Roundtable, coming to you all the way from Minnesota. Your host team 2052 Nightcrawler presents this weekly FRC gathering where FIRST robotics competition teams take cooperation off the field. Share your knowledge, give and get advice, solve a challenge, or celebrate what makes your team special. 3, 2, 1, go!
All right, recording has been started. Welcome everyone. Some housekeeping stuff. I'll post links in the chat here in a minute once we get rolling with a link to the Nightcrawler page where you can see old videos, sign up for the email if you're not already on the emailing list to get the weekly reminders, add the meeting to your calendar, all that fun stuff. And tonight's presenters are Afomi and Ashley from Nightcrawler. The floor is yours. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves if you want to give any more information about yourself, and you can take it away.
All right. Do you want to kick things off, Afomia, with your introduction?
Sure. My name is Afomia. I'm on Team 2052 Nightcrawlers, and I just joined this year. This is my first year, and I'm on programming. Ashley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Ashley Sillen. This is also my first year on Team 2052. I just started this year as a programming mentor. And so today we'll be teaching you guys a little bit about PathPlanner and hopefully learning from everyone on the call as well, since it is both of our first years on a robotics team. A lot of this is new to us, and especially PathPlanner. So we'll share some of our learnings from using it, and then also hopefully learning from everyone else.
We've been doing a lot of experimenting the past few weeks and reading more about PathPlanner, so it'd be great to learn some things from teams who maybe have more experience or have other ideas of how to do things.
Yeah. So I think we can kick off. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Looks good.
All right. So, so today we'll be going through a little bit about PathPlanner. So just a quick agenda. We'll go through a quick introduction to what PathPlanner is in case people aren't familiar with it. Afomia will walk through how to actually set up a project within PathPlanner, and then she'll give an introduction to how to set up your code to also work with the PathPlanner tool. And then we'll do a demo of how to actually create paths and autos within it, and then showing how across an entire team, everybody can use the same path planner and access everybody else's autos. And since this is our first year on the team and our first year using path planner, we are interested in learning from everybody else. I guess my first question before we even jump in is who has been using path planner already? Or if you aren't using path planner, is there another tool that you found to be effective? So I'll pause there.
So my team, I'm Zoe Saki, and I go to Mansfield High School, and I'm on a robotics team. And we started playing around with PathPlanner last season, but we didn't find a lot of success. And then we're still trying out PathPlanner again this year, and we've ran into some issues. But we're hoping like throughout the year by 10,000 links, we can have some really nice autos put together.
Awesome. What kind of issues are you running into?
Mainly just like issues with like accuracy, and we believe it's because of the PID, and we haven't had much luck tuning it. So yeah.
We've been testing some of our example autos over time as we were experimenting with PathPlanner on a robot from a previous season, and I think we also noticed some error with how accurate it is. Do you guys find error with some other commands like shooting or anything, or was it more of the driving?
We haven't tested it with shooting. That was supposed to be done on Saturday, and I wasn't at that meeting. So Tuesday, Thursday, we'll be testing that. And I'm curious to see what the code for that looks like, because like for us, or I coded it and it seemed too simple, I guess, or wasn't sure if I did it correctly.
Yeah, we'll go through some creating commands, which I think Ashley will explain in a little bit, and we'll see how those, if that's a different way than the way that you guys did it, and maybe one way is better, or you guys can share how you did it.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, I will say we haven't tested this with our 2024 robot yet. So, as we start testing that, we may run into some issues there too. So I guess I am curious to see how that all goes too. I'm sure we'll run into similar issues.
Yeah. Have you guys tested just like driving it forward or anything?
Yes, we've tested with driving and intake and a certain arm on our, what year was the robot from, Ashley? Do you remember?
Firefly.
You guys are using the 2022 robot.
Yes, from the 2022 robot.
Nice.
Yeah, so things are working with the 2022 robot, but who knows when we start loading it into 2024.
Uh-huh.
Has anybody else used any other tools other than PathPlanner? Because I think there's also like a PathWeaver tool. I don't know if anybody's tried that.
Some stuff about PathWeaver and how effective it is, or if it's not effective, if anybody's tried that out.
Sounds like no one's using PathWeaver. What I think is interesting, if you go on the PathWeaver site, it says to use PathPlanner. So I was just curious if anybody's tried it. But all right, well, I think I'll start going through the slides here, and feel free to stop us at any times with questions, and if you have any suggestions for us as well, we'd love to hear them. So we'll start with a quick introduction to what is PathPlanner in case teams aren't using this. So PathPlanner is a helpful tool that we found for generating our paths and autos. So when you load in the tool, it actually will import a picture of the field, and they have the fields from, I think, the past 3 years, but you can use the tool to draw out different paths and then convert those into autos where you can add in different commands. One thing that's really nice about it too is you have the ability to preview your paths in real time. So it'll show like the robot chassis, the speed that it's moving, and how it's like rotating around different field elements. And the other benefit here is that once you create these autos, assuming you have your project set up correctly, it'll import everything back into your code automatically. So it's a pretty useful tool that Afomia and I have found works pretty well. But again, we haven't run it into our newest robot. So, I guess the question's still out on how accurate it will be once we start incorporating the real robot with the actual field. Because also I want to add too that when we've been running it into the Firefly robot, we haven't had any field elements. We've just been using kind of an open field just to make sure it's moving, intaking, etc. So we haven't actually tested it with any kind of obstacles. So that's something that we're hoping to do this week. So we'll go through a little bit about the initial setup, and I'll turn it over to Afomia to walk through how to actually do this.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. To use PathPlanner, the first thing you need to do is install the app PathPlanner, and this app was actually created by Team 3015. And it can be found on the App Store for both Mac and Windows, but we recommend using the GitHub because you can find the download link on there, as well as a link to the dev website. And the dev website has a lot of good detailed instructions about PathPlanner, as well as there's also example projects on the PathPlanner GitHub. Okay, this is the PathPlanner dev website. Me and Ashley spent a lot of time reading through all the articles and all the pages on here, and there's a lot of details about specific tasks that PathPlanner can do, things about commands, custom logging, all sorts of things that even we haven't had time to explore yet. But there's a lot of information on here, and it's pretty understandable. There's even a getting started page that was very helpful when we initially got PathPlanner. Yeah.
And for the next
On the actual GitHub, there's example projects that I think would be a very good starting spot for many teams. We looked at a few of these to understand how to do named commands, as well as the auto builder and where things should be in the code. So I think that's a good spot for teams to explore if they're new to PathPlanner and they want to see an actual finished project that maybe they could use as a starting spot.
Next slide.
Okay. Folder setup was something that was a little bit complicated for us because it took a lot of trial and error when we initially opened up PathPlanner onto a different project or an incorrect folder outside of the project and had a little bit of a panic time thinking that we lost our paths and autos, but actually it can cause complications with some of our autos if the folder is not set up correctly. However, if you have your project repository cloned on your local device, when you initially open PathPlanner, it'll say open project. So when you press the open project and you open your actual project folder for your robot, it should automatically set up your PathPlanner folder under, there'll be a .PathPlanner. I'm sorry, Ashley, I can't see your screen.
Oh.
Okay, there we go. A .PathPlanner under your actual folder. For this example, we're using a 2024 Firefly Autos project. But later on, if you already have a project open, like this example that's on the screen right now, you can open the top left of PathPlanner and there'll be a hamburger menu and this screen will show up. And you can press switch project if you want to switch robot projects or open a different folder. And that is how it'll set up the .PathPlanner folder, as well as how the paths and autos actually show up under the deploy folder, which I think we'll talk about on the next slide. I'm curious to know if there's any teams that started with PathPlanner, or I think the Mountain View team who has tried PathPlanner and maybe had some problems with the folder setup as well, or keeping track of where the folders are, if that was difficult for anybody.
It wasn't very difficult for us. It took us a little bit to like figure out how it worked, but like it's pretty simple and straightforward after you understand it. Easy to work with.
Yeah, I agree.
Wait, and isn't there like when you push your code to GitHub, if somebody else opens up your code, they'll have all your paths? I saw that and I thought that was like really nice too.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think we'll go through that as well. Maybe I'll jump ahead here, Fomia, if you want to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the functionality of sharing autos between team members and different devices, but I think we'll do that in a demonstration later. That is a very good, a very crucial part of PathPlanner. Later on in the code folder setup, this is also just more details of how to set up the folder. And if your project is set up correctly, your PathPlanner folder will appear under main deploy in your robot code. And there will be a separate folder for your autos and paths. So yeah, just where the arrow is pointing, it'll be where their .PathPlanner folder is, as well as a drop-down menu where you can look through your autos that you have when you are choosing one and all the different paths that make up your autos. As well as all team members that want to create autos need to put the folder in this spot, which it'll set up for you in the beginning when you open your project folder, because this is how PathPlanner will sync across different computers when you push and pull code so that everyone can see the autos that one person writes on their own device. Okay, I think we're going to talk more about the actual code setup. Okay, the first thing you need to do is install the PathPlanner library, which is also something else that can be found on the PathPlanner dev website. I think, Ashley, if you want to show on the website where it is.
Yep.
Should be under getting started.
Yep. So
okay, you can install the library using the install new libraries feature in VS Code straight into your project. Just copying that JSON file URL. And we didn't have much trouble with this, but it's pretty simple, but it's also a crucial step for all the PathPlanner functionalities you'll need in the future.
And just keep in mind, too, that you're selecting the right option depending on whatever code you're using or whatever language you're using. So we're using Java, but they do have different files for different languages.
Okay.
All right.
The next step is creating the methods in the Drive subsystem that are essential for the actual auto builder, which, as Ashley will explain in the next slide. But in order for auto builder to run properly, we need to create these 4 necessary methods that the auto builder code on the dev website assumes that you have these methods. And these methods all have to do with odometry, which is very important for autos created in PathPlanner to run smoothly. It's basically how the robot uses sensors to estimate its position on the field. The sensors are usually a specific number of encoders and a gyroscope that measures the robot angle. And the classes in odometry, which the classes in odometry use kinematics and periodic inputs of robot speed and angles to estimate where the robot is on the field so that your paths know where you're starting or where you're driving to or where you are during the auto. And we can see how this is useful in the 4 methods. The first one is get pose, which is just the robot pose supplier, and it's a method that returns a pose for pose 2D, which we've been exploring using that in logging with using Advantage Scope. Our team has been experimenting with viewing the auto in Advantage Scope, and so that you can look back on what the robot did when you ran an auto previously. The next one is reset pose, which is useful because it resets the odometry if the robot has a specific starting pose in your auto, or not a specific starting pose. If you have inside your auto, if you choose to have a starting pose, this method is just the one that resets your odometry. Get speeds is the robot chassis speed supplier. Pretty important, but it also just uses the encoder as well as the periodic inputs of robot speed to estimate. It's also used to estimate where the robot is, because by using the speed supplier and the gyroscope and everything, the robot will know where it is on the field, as well as your auto will know where your robot is on the field. And finally, drive robot relative is just a method that drives the robot depending on the robot relative chassis speeds. There's definitely further descriptions on the PathPlanner dev website, and it's also where we learned that these methods were necessary when we initially tried to create the auto builder in the Drive subsystem. Are there any questions about these methods or if any other teams have had any problems with these?
I have a question. You said it's hard to read the text. There's a set initial pose. Is that right? Is that
it's pose 2D and reset pose.
Okay, so if you're using April tags, or if you're not using April tags, maybe that's probably the better way to say it. If you're not using April tags and you're just sticking your robot in the field, you can tell this is how you would initialize this to say your robot is starting 3 feet from the left and 2 feet from the back wall. Is that right?
I believe so. There's also inputs on PathPlanner where you can set your initial starting pose.
Oh, okay.
Use that, I believe.
Yeah, so we'll show that as part of the demo too, but you can actually designate where on the field you want it to start. And then that'll override whatever your initial pose is.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Okay. If nobody else has any recommendations or questions, Ashley is going to explain how we can use these methods in the actual auto builder in the Drive subsystem.
All right. So one of the things that's really important to actually run your autos that you're creating in PathPlanner is to configure this auto builder. And the good news is the code's already written for you and it's available on the PathPlanner website. So I'll show where to find that. So it's under, build an auto. There's instructions to actually configure this auto builder. So this will allow you to run those full autonomous routines based on the files that you create within PathPlanner. So it'll create the code for you within the PathPlanner tool and import into your Visual Studio, but if you don't have the auto builder configured within your Drive subsystem, it won't actually be able to run those files. So the code is all available here for you, depending on what you're using as part of your Drive subsystem. So we're using Swerve, so we would just copy and paste this code into our Drive subsystem. And so let me go back to the slides here. Or actually, I'll show it within our code here too. So within our drivetrain subsystem, this is where we configured our auto builder. So everything is here. And so all we had to do was copy and paste that in, and then we'll be able to run our different auto files.
Ashley,
But
if you're trying to show us code, you might have to increase your font size.
let me just zoom in.
There you go. That's better.
There we go. Oh, I maybe made it too big. All right, is that better? Can everybody see that all right?
It's better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we just pasted in here into our drivetrain subsystem. And then, yeah, and so I think the piece too that we haven't done yet is we haven't adjusted any of these PID constants, but I think that might help with the accuracy issues that the Mounts View team is seeing as well. And again, we haven't tried this with our 2024 robot yet, so we may need to do a little bit of playing around with those to make sure that it's operating accurately.
Yeah, definitely. A few weeks ago when we were testing it on the Firefly robot, we did have to edit, I think, one of the PID constants. Mm-hmm. I did this with one of the mentors because we were testing how accurate it was. And the robot seemed to be overshooting the ending point that it thought it was supposed to go to, so it would do a kind of jerky movement. So we adjusted one of the PID constants, I'm not sure which one, but to make it like slow down approaching the endpoint more so that it wouldn't do as much of a jerky movement. But that's definitely something we'll have to explore more with our actual robot.
Yeah, and I think when you copy and paste the code from the PathPlanner website, I think all of them are set to 0. So you may have to make adjustments once you start running it into your robot.
Have you guys tuned your PID for your robots before, like this season?
So I guess this is both of our first years, but
yeah, sorry,
but I believe so.
Yeah, I did. I don't know that I've participated in tuning PIDs for the Swerve drive, so we've been doing Swerve for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder. Oh, Caleb's on here. Caleb, if you're paying attention and you have anything to contribute, please do. Caleb would have done that last year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The PID tuning on Swerve. So what we did for that was set everything to 0 and then increase the P until we start seeing the wheels oscillate. And once that happens, we, of course, turn it back down so it stops oscillating and then increase the D value until it gets to a point where it's quick enough that does what we want. The I value we don't really use unless if it's not getting to the point you want. It's kind of like an offset to your PID.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the kind of the method we go through. And I think there's some online resources through WPI, but yeah.
Interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation, Caleb. Any other questions on that piece of it? All right, so the other thing I want to mention here within Auto Builder is it is also configured for mirroring depending on what side of the field you're on. So when you actually create paths, I forget which one it defaults to, if it's blue or red. It looks like blue. So it's already set up to flip based on what's configured at the driver station. So that's all part of the Auto Builder tool. So you don't have to create separate paths or autos for both sides of the field. It'll know how to flip it as part of the mirroring. So far we've been creating all of our paths and autos on the left side of the field, the blue side. But it does have the capability to flip. And I don't know, Fomi, if you've tested that out before. I personally haven't.
No, I haven't yet, but that's definitely something we'll need to test out.
I will say we've been trying to use PathPlanner as well, and we accidentally tested it by switching to a new driver station that was configured the other way, and it does work.
That's great. Did you have to do anything different with the code, or did it just automatically work?
It just automatically worked with their example supplier there.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move on, are there any other questions on Auto Builder?
Hi, this is Tanya from Team 3291. I think I have a couple students on here that are being a little bit quieter. One of our problems is flipping, which we think might be related to it defaulting to blue and our driver station set on red. So that maybe is solving that. But one of my coders reports that they are, when we're building Auto Builder, if we do a multi-step path, it is running step 1 and then step 1 and 2, and then step 1 and 2 and 3, and then step 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Is there a way that we are maybe not stopping or queuing up a set of codes to make them not just keep repeating?
So when you say it's repeating, are you adding in like multiple paths into one auto? Is that how you're structuring it? Just make sure I'm following.
Yeah, and I don't know. Well, I think one of my coders is on the call, but he is not chiming in.
Because
he's got multiple paths built, but he's trying to queue up one that just has multiple steps in it. So just trying to queue up one specific one.
Yeah, so I think, so when you're running the auto, I think you would have to configure which paths you want it to run as part of that. So if you're selecting multiple paths within one auto, there's actually, like one of the tools within this auto builder is it will do this thing called path finding, where it'll just navigate the shortest point between the different paths. So if you have like 4 paths set up back to back within your auto, the code will operate where basically when you finish the first path, it'll automatically start the second path and it will just take the shortest path to get there. I'm not sure if maybe that's the issue you're running into. And I think the solution to that would be to configure for each auto to just have one path within it. Otherwise, you are going to see that behavior. So I would give that a try, having one path per auto. Otherwise, if you do have multiple paths, you have right now, if you're using the default code from the PathPlanner website, that's what it will do, is it'll just, initiate that second path.
Thank you.
And I think, Fomia, when we were testing out some of our autos, I think we did try that with like 2 different paths within the auto. Is that right? Because I think we had one where it was like doing like kind of an L shape and then it did something else.
Yeah, we did try out multiple paths in an auto, but we didn't experience the problem with it repeating paths. I'm not sure why that would happen, but I think, Ashley, you're right. It might just be it resetting your starting position and trying to go back to where the next path starts. If the beginning of the next path doesn't line up with the end of the first path.
Yeah, and we can also take a look once we actually get into the PathPlanner tool that there might be something within the settings too that you can configure basically to maybe there's like a loop function within there that I guess we haven't played around with, but we could definitely take a look at that. I guess any other questions on Auto Builder? All right. So I guess one of the last things I want to touch on with the code is the name commands. So in order to allow robot commands to be run within and between your different paths, you have to actually configure the different name commands within robot container. And so We did include the command here. I don't know how difficult it is to see, but I'll also navigate into our code here. Yeah, so we have a few different name commands, and I'll try to zoom in again. So down here we have different name commands. We have intake, our hopper, because again, this is an older robot. We don't have a hopper in this year's robot. And then arm out is our other named command. And so by configuring those within robot container, we can then set those commands within the PathPlanner tool. And so I'll just switch over to PathPlanner quickly to show what that looks like as well. So within here in the named commands, so I think we have intake configured. So then it will know to intake as part of the auto that you create. And you can designate where on that path you want it to do by using event markers, which I think Afomia will show as part of the demo as well.
I have a question about the definitions in the code.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back to Visual Studio.
Yep.
Do those commands have to be reinstantiated? Like if we had them defined at the top as, you know, command variable name equals new command, can we use the variable in that place, or does it have to be a new instantiation of the object?
That's a good question. I don't know if we tried it the other way.
Okay.
Based on my, sorry, I'll jump in. You should be able to use the variable because basically if you look at line 73 here, you're creating a new command, a run command. You're creating a command right there. So you're getting an instance to an object. So whether you passed in an instance to an object with a variable or you created one, I would be surprised if there was a difference.
Like the hopper one is creating a new version of the outtake command. If that was defined above as a variable, you could use the variable in there, right?
Okay. Yeah, I would think that should work.
Should be able to, yes.
We
didn't use PathPlanner last year. We had sort of a homegrown solution, but we would do exactly what you're asking, Dwayne, where we create the variables and then use the variables.
Okay. Yeah, we had some debate on that last week and whether that would work or not. So I thought I'd ask. So.
Try it, right?
Yeah. I don't see why it shouldn't. We just hadn't tried it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And if you do try it and it works, let us know. We'll give it a try ourselves as well. Any other questions on the name commands, or I guess anything else that people have tried here with auto builder commands? You know, again, this is our first year using this, so maybe we aren't doing things as efficiently as we could be.
Actually, I think I asked you guys this question last week, but when you add a new command, do you have to then compile in order for it to show up in PathPlanner? Once you've added a new one in your code?
Yeah, I think you do have to compile. And then the other thing too, to get it to show up in PathPlanner that we found is you have to like force close and reopen PathPlanner as well. It doesn't automatically refresh. Yeah, I think we were doing a compile every time that we were adding new commands. Any other questions? All right. The last thing I'll go through is how to actually load an auto. So you also do that in the robot container. And so let me scroll down here. So there's a separate command, get autonomous command to actually load in whatever auto you want to run. And so the example here that we're using is just this PathPlanner test auto, which if I scroll up here, I actually think that we created a new branch for this.
Yeah,
I don't think this one's actually in here anymore. But like if we want to run this example auto, we would just change it here to example auto, and it will run this auto file. There's also instructions to create a sendable chooser. We haven't done that yet. We've just been manually entering in whichever auto we want to execute.
I think Caleb was working on a sendable chooser a few meetings ago, but I haven't seen it, but I think we did try that out. I'm not sure though.
I'm guessing that's in Caleb's branch.
Does everyone know what a sendable chooser is? Okay, so I guess there's silence, so nobody has a question about sendable chooser.
I will jump in and say that we have been able to use the sendable chooser one. And it works pretty well.
Yeah, we've been using the sendable choosers with Shuffleboard for years with our old way of doing autos, and it's awesome. It's a quick way because you'd never want to be recompiling and deploying code just before a match to change your autos.
What is Shuffleboard? Is that something that most people have used in the past?
Yeah, Shuffleboard or Smart Dashboard is the sort of companion to the driver station. So it's where you can enter something or pick something from a drop down, which is your sendable chooser, turn buttons on and off, change your values. So you can use that as sort of an admin console, I guess, is a great way to put it. And then you can also send data to Shuffleboard or Smart Dashboard. They're fairly synonymous, old name, new name, but it's still the same thing. And that way, if you're trying to diagnose, how fast are my wheels spinning or what position is my elevator at, you can send that to the Smart Dashboard or Shuffleboard, and then you can go there and you can see the values on the display.
Okay.
Additionally, one of the programmers on my robotics team got to upload the field on it so you could see where you are on the field.
Yes, that is a very good point. And last week, Andy from Binary Battalion gave a presentation on April tags, and he mentioned that specifically as well. And one of the things that he said was that you want to try to write all of your autos using the blue side 00, because that field on the Shuffleboard or Smart Dashboard is always in one orientation. And he said he thinks it prefers the blue side. And so if you want to see where your robot is, you need to have all your autos from the blue reference, I guess is the right way to say it, so that it draws correctly on Shuffleboard. That's a great, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was brought up last week about putting the field on Shuffleboard.
At least in my experience, it usually starts the robot in the bottom left of the field. So yeah, I would assume that's the blue side, right?
I think you're right. I think that's what Andy was saying last week when he was mentioning that.
So is Shuffleboard something that would work with PathPlanner?
I don't see why not. I mean,
yeah, they shouldn't conflict. They're opposite, or not. They're not competing tools. So Shuffleboard is more like a companion to the driver station, and it's great for picking which auto you want to run, but then also dumping out diagnostic data. And as was mentioned, the whole idea of kind of being able to draw and show where you're at in the field.
What does your team use? Do you guys not use Shuffleboard?
We do. Well, Shuffleboard and Smart Dashboard are. Does anybody know? I think Smart Dashboard is the old name, Shuffleboard is the new name, but they still call it Smart Dashboard in the code. It's sort of a mess.
Shuffleboard, I think, or Smart Dashboard's a subset of Shuffleboard. If you pull up Shuffleboard, there's a Smart Dashboard drop down that'll shows you all the values that you put in there, but you could also add it straight to Shuffleboard using tabs. That's the nice thing about Shuffleboard over Smart Dashboard is Smart Dashboard was just one screen, where Shuffleboard has got tabs, so you could do something for swerve, you could do something for cameras, you could do something for climbers, so you could get incoming stats, and then the main page that could be more generic stuff, right? And then you could dig into it. So it's very cool.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's something we're planning to use again this year. I personally haven't played around with it. Thanks for the background on that. Any other questions? I think the next thing we'll get into is the demo. So I guess any questions before we move into that? All right. Yep. So we will transition to the demo, and I'll turn it over to Afomia. So I'll stop sharing. And Afomia will show us a little bit about how she's been creating paths and autos within PathPlanner.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Let me share my screen. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry, give me a second to let screen share.
While Afomia is getting that pulled up, I guess, is there anything in particular that people want to see as part of the demo? I definitely want to look into if there's some kind of like looping that happens within the autos to see if maybe that's the issue the other team is running. I don't remember which team that was. I guess, is there anything else that people have been struggling with within PathPlanner that they want to see?
So actually, there was a problem that I was having, which was getting the robot to actually rotate. Where in PathPlanner, if I told it to rotate 90 degrees, it didn't actually showcase it.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. I think, so when we were testing our autos so far, we didn't have any issues with the rotation, but we may also be configuring the rotation differently. So I am curious, were you programming like the rotation targets within the tool?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely look into that because I don't think we've been running into issues, but Afomia will show how we've been doing the rotations within PathPlanner, and yeah, maybe we're doing it differently.
Were you able to run your auto and your robot did rotate, but it didn't visualize it? Is that what you're saying?
So I actually haven't been able to test it yet, but so far it hasn't been showing the rotation in PathPlanner nor in real life.
Okay.
Have you guys had to do like any tuning of like the different velocities and accelerations you set in the program? Because I think we were having a problem where our acceleration was having a large impact on our accuracy.
Yes, we haven't tried that yet. I think, as we start incorporating field elements, we will likely need to adjust those numbers. But as of now, we've just been testing our autos more so to see that they're actually moving in the way that we're configuring within PathPlanner. So we haven't played around with anything like the acceleration yet. But I think, as we start testing them with the field and within the 2024 robot, I'm guessing we will have to make adjustments. We haven't seen it. We haven't had the opportunity to see it potentially crash into the stage yet. So I think those will be the opportunities where we're making some adjustments.
Did you work with Afomia?
Yeah, sorry. I need to leave the meeting real quick and come back so I can quit Chrome and let it screen share. So I'm going to do that real quick.
Okay, go do that. One of the things that one of the other lead programming mentors on Nightcrawler brought up, we were having this discussion, and I think Tyler from Firebears, who's on the call, we were having this discussion with Tyler, and an important thing is that your robot needs to know where it's on the field in order to do things. And so if you can drive teleop and you can drive to a certain distance and your odometry tells you that you're at the same distance that the tape measure tells you, then you know that your robot is talking to odometry correctly. And the same thing is true for rotation. If you rotate and odometry tells you you're pointing the same direction the robot's actually pointing, those are the first things you have to do before you do anything in autonomous, is to make sure that while driving in teleop, that you're going to where you are where the robot thinks you are. And that's a hard thing, because sometimes you got to like tweak your wheel diameter just a little bit. Instead of setting it to 4 inches, you maybe have to set it to 3.96 inches or something like that. Those types of things can really help you get your robot dialed in. And once you have those things dialed in, then you can go do your autonomous. But if you're driving your autonomous and you're way off, let's say you're off by a half a foot or even more than that, or off by a lot of degrees, before you do anything with your auto, you should make sure that when you do it in teleop and then you ask odometry, where am I, by dumping it to shuffleboard or smart dashboard, or kicking those values out in the debug console or something, make sure your robot knows where it's at. One of the things that we found the very first year we did Swerve is that we could drive teleop wherever we wanted to go and it ran just fine. But as soon as we tried to do autonomous, if we rotated the robot, it had no idea where it was on the field. And we're pretty confident we had a unit of measure conversion in the early days of writing Swerve code. And so if your robot doesn't know where it's at in teleop, there's no way you're going to be able to do an auto. So that's a good tip that Brian wanted to make sure that we shared tonight.
So another question I have is, if you're using like April tags, will with like the pose estimator class, will PathPlanner take that in as the starting pose and use that?
Ashley or Philomia, do you know the answer to that? I have a guess, but do you guys know?
Yeah, so I guess what we've done is like the starting pose is I guess we've been successful in configuring that within PathPlanner, just by setting where the box is. I guess while Philomia is getting set up here, I'll just reshare my screen with PathPlanner. And then
I can share my screen now, but yeah,
perfect.
there's a preset starting pose that we've been using that should work to set up where you want your robot to start, or where your robot is starting.
And then like if you have April tags, will they, if you put the robot off a little bit of where you tell it should be starting, will it automatically correct for that? Because you give it the pose from the odometry.
Yeah, I guess we haven't tried that yet with the April tags.
We
haven't tried with April tags, but it should automatically put your robot where it should be to start the path. Sorry, Scott.
Yeah. Sorry, I wanted to let you guys finish. I'm stepping back as much as I can. So April tags updates your drivetrain. So drivetrain owns the odometry. Your pose estimator is constantly updating drivetrain, saying, here's where you are, here's where you are, here's where you are. And so my understanding is that PathPlanner is saying, I need to get to this path, and asking drivetrain, where am I? And drivetrain is getting its position anytime an April tag can see. Anytime you can see an April tag, it's updating drivetrain. So the short answer to your question is yes, and the longer answer is it should work the way you think it should work.
Yeah, and I will qualify that with, you probably do still want to have the preset starting pose in PathPlanner, just so that it starts the path, even if it's not seen an April tag right away. It will, once it gets an April tag, it'll update and follow that.
I have a question about that preset starting pose thing. So we've been testing it like in a hallway, so not on a field, and we have it set at, it's not set at 0, 0. It's like set at like some value of X and some value of Y. When we like enable our robot and like everything compiles, does it set our position, our X and Y, to what it would be running in PathPlanner? Like, does that make sense? Is that what presetting it means?
I believe so.
Tyler, do you know the answer to this? This sounds like something you guys would have had to have done already.
Yes. So when you put together an auto and you click the preset starting pose, What it does is when it starts that auto, it tells your odometry you are at this X and Y coordinate, and then it runs the entire path relative to that.
Right. So when you guys have like used it, when you switch back into teleop, maybe that wasn't like, maybe the path planner position wasn't as accurate. Do you have issues, or does it like correct itself in teleop?
If it's, you know, let's say you have a pose and it says, you know, you're starting right up against the speaker, and if they put it a foot behind it, the robot will think that it started right at the speaker, so it'll be a foot off, because there's no data that the robot has to correct for that unless you have April tags.
Okay, so you want the starting pose to be as accurate as possible
Correct.
to set you up nicely for teleop.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Afomia, do you want to share, and maybe we can start walking through some of those things?
Yep.
And also, I don't know if the question came up while you were off of the meeting, but there's a question around rotation targets and how we're getting the robot to rotate appropriately. So that would be good to show as well.
Okay. Sorry, could you repeat that real quick?
Yeah, so a question came up around how to actually get the robot to rotate during the auto.
Okay, I'll go over rotation targets, which are usually in the path, or you can set them at different checkpoints. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay. All right. When you first open up PathPlanner, if it's your first time opening up PathPlanner, the screen will look a little different. It'll just be a background of the field, and there'll be a button at the bottom that says Open Project, and that's when you do what we discussed earlier about opening your robot project so that all the folders set up properly. But if you have already used it, or if you already did that, it'll show up like this. And if you ever want to change which robot project you have open, you can just press this hamburger menu that we also looked at earlier and switch your project. Over here, there's also settings. We were exploring this earlier. This is where you set your robot attributes, like your width and length and max module speed. We haven't really specified these yet since we haven't tried it on our actual robot, but we'll definitely do that. And you can also set your default constraints during your paths and autos for your max velocity, acceleration, and all that other stuff. And this is also the field image, which should be using the one from this year, Crescendo. Ashley was playing around with the theme color earlier to get it to match the night crawlers, but that's also a fun little thing you can do. This is in settings under the hamburger menu, top left. After you have the project open that you want to use, there's two sides of PathPlanner. You can use paths and you can use autos. And also feel free to stop me if anybody has a question or a recommendation of how to do something. So yeah, there's two sides, there's paths and autos. The paths are what you use to build up your autos. So I'll just look at paths first. This was an example path, but I'll start new. You press this plus button. They're kind of the same. You can do new path. I'll name this one. I'll just name it that. So when we explore the commits and stuff later, it'll show up as roundtable path. So there's a lot of different things you can do on PathPlanner. The first thing is probably look at is waypoints. You have your start point over here. Then you have different waypoints in the middle. And an easy way to add waypoints is just double clicking. It'll move your end point to the end and then create a new waypoint where it was. Under each waypoint, like your start point, you can set the X position, the Y position, and your heading, which I think is where your robot was already facing before you were at that point. Ashley, do you remember? I think we were talking about that a few meetings ago.
Yeah, and I think there's another option to actually set the starting position. I think it's toward the bottom.
Yeah, there's a pre-starting state, but I was reading on the dev website, and this just moves a green box, I think. Hold on. Yeah, it'll move the green box so that you can set up the box where your robot physically is on the field. If you want to see like the auto, the thing where it automatically drives to the beginning of your path, but that doesn't actually set where your robot is. I think the thing that you're mentioning is in the actual auto part.
Okay, so I think if you just drag the box around, I thought it should update those values automatically.
Do you mean here of the
Yeah.
start point? Oh, yeah. It'll do that for if you want specific points.
I'd like to clarify the heading is not the rotation of the actual robot's frame, it's the direction
wheel.
of the robot traveling.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had to play around with that a little bit when we were testing because at some point we were running a path where the robot was driving forward, but the heading was assuming that the robot was driving backwards, I think. So it used up some time to turn around the wheels. So we had to play around with that. But I think automatically when you start making a path, it'll be correct if you use this little dot to set which way your robot is facing, because this little dot is where forward is on the robot. Okay, and you can set as many waypoints as you'd like. The waypoints are also useful because this is where you can add rotation targets. Like you can add one to waypoint 1. Just press add rotation target, and they'll show up under this folder. And it'll show the time that you were at. Also, the actual time of your whole path will be up here, simulated driving time. Just an estimate, but we've tested and it's pretty accurate. The rotation targets will show you at one time what time it's at, and you can also set the rotation to what you want it as a number. Otherwise, you can also come over here and drag the little dot to rotate. Like let's say you were trying to shoot from here, and you could just drag it around to find the exact degree at which you could shoot most accurately. You can also set reach as fast as possible, which we've experimented with, and it's basically from the last rotation target, it'll try to reach this next one as fast as possible, even before it gets to this actual waypoint, which is useful if you're trying to like turn quickly in a short amount of space, if you're trying to like pick up a note and then shoot a note quickly. But otherwise, it'll just try to meet this exact rotation once it gets to that point, I believe.
Maybe a quick pause there for the team that was struggling with the rotation targets. So were you seeing it rotate within PathPlanner like this, how it's like turning to match where the box is placed?
So I was not seeing it rotate like this, but I was seeing like the little box that actually shows what it should look like.
Do you mean this gray box?
Yes.
And were you actually rotating the box within PathPlanner and it wasn't moving to match that?
Yes, I tried rotating the box and I also tried changing the rotation target.
Okay. The one thing I would maybe suggest if it's still not working is I think there was an update to PathPlanner pushed out within the past few weeks. So depending on when you downloaded PathPlanner, maybe it's a bug that's been fixed.
Okay, and
I've
for
seen
the
it work like this.
for the updates, is it fine to just go into the store and update from there?
Yeah, that should be fine. Yeah, I would check first if there's maybe an update that you need to install, and that maybe that'll correct the issue if there was a bug with it. Otherwise, I guess I would be curious too, like if you have PathPlanner and you want to share what you're seeing too, we could try to troubleshoot later too.
I'm sorry, just to understand what the problem was, were you not seeing your physical robot rotate, or are you saying the purple box showing where your robot should be wasn't rotating?
I wasn't seeing the actual robot on PathPlanner rotate.
On PathPlanner?
Yes, the white moving box.
Okay, I'm not sure why that would be. I think Ashley's right with that might be a bug that can be fixed by downloading updates to PathPlanner. But I know we haven't seen that, so I'm not sure.
I know we've had other issues with PathPlanner that we resolved with an update. I think I remember Ken was having some issues that once we updated PathPlanner, it was fine.
Okay.
I would try that, and if it's still not working, then we can take a look at it and see what else is going on.
Okay. Another thing you can do is set global constraints. I believe I haven't played around with this too much, but you can use the default constraints that we looked at earlier in the settings. I think this just shows your global constraints. Otherwise, you can set different ones for this specific path if you have a reason to do that. Otherwise, we've just been using the original ones that we set up at the beginning. Your goal end state is basically controls this little red box that'll show where you want your robot to end up at the end of your auto. You can set your rotation manually if you want, and velocity. We played around with this a little bit with combining different paths in an auto so that the robot doesn't try to, for example, if you have two paths right after each other in your auto, we were experimenting with setting the end state velocity to not zero so that the robot tries to keep moving through the end state straight into the other path so that you don't have a kind of delay between the autos. So we're definitely going to play around with that a little bit more, but it seemed to be pretty effective to not have less of a delay so that your robot doesn't pause between paths where there doesn't need to be a pause. Like if you're still going straight throughout both paths, it would be helpful to set this to not zero. There's also another rotate as fast as possible, which again tries to get to the goal rotation as quickly as possible before you get to that end box position. These are rotation targets, and event markers is something we've been playing around with a little more in the last week. You can, once you set one, you can move it throughout the path using this thing. So let's say you wanted to have one over here for intake, I suppose. Under here, you can set, this is where you'd use the named commands. Otherwise, you can use named commands in the actual auto, but we've been trying to put some of the commands in the path so it's more simple when you're combining paths inside the auto part of PathPlanner. So once you open an event marker, there'll be a little drop-down menu where you can make it a parallel group, sequential, deadline, race, all sorts of things. And over here, you can add more command groups that you already have or a named command. I think we have an intake one. So for example, the robot inside the actual code, when you open your project folder or your in VS code, it'll show that you have an event marker at this specific time that'll say intake or run the command intake. So it should run that command if you have it set up in your code when you run this path with your auto. So that's pretty helpful if you don't want to add your other commands outside of driving within the auto part of PathPlanner, but rather in the actual path.
I have a question about that. So one of the things that you can do is a wait command, and it doesn't show you that the robot waits like as it's driving. Does it actually, have you guys like played around with it, and does it wait in real time or in real life?
We've played around with a wait command in the actual auto part of PathPlanner, like adding a wait command over here, but not in the actual path. But when we tried it using inside here in the auto as a command, it did work. It didn't really show up on this image or this like simulation. It didn't really show the robot pausing there, but when we ran it physically on the robot, it did pause and wait to run the next command. Okay, then we have constraint zones, which I also haven't played around with too much, but you can add a new zone with, let's say you want like from here to here, and it'll highlight that part of the path. I think Caleb was playing around with this a few days ago, trying to get it to slow down or like set the velocity of the robot slower, I think, when we're shooting, I believe, so that we're going too fast as we're trying to shoot so it doesn't mess up with aiming. I'm not sure, but I know we've been trying this out a little bit. I haven't that much, but you can set basically you're setting a zone where you can change the constraints so that they're different from the global constraints if you have specific needs in that area that you have highlighted, like over here, for example. Okay, and then this is the preview starting state that we were talking about earlier. And like I said, this starting state seemed to not really change the odometry or where your robot thinks that it is. I believe it's only just showing where your robot. I believe you can change it only because it'll allow you to like simulate where your robot is physically on the field and then see what it's going to do once you enable, but I don't think it sets your actual robot to believe that it's there. I'm not sure if any other teams can confirm that.
I think your assessment is probably right. Maybe Tyler, I know that you guys have done this already, and maybe you can jump in here. But where your robot is at the start is it. You can the path can guess where it is, but it'll be wherever the robot says it is. So whether it gets it from an April tag, or this path is starting from some other path. This guesstimate is like it should be like this. But in reality, when you run it, the robot might be off by 6 inches or it might be off by a foot. And so it's going to do its best to get back on the path from whatever its starting pose actually is in real life.
Yes, that's just to make the preview have it rotated the right way. It really doesn't do a whole lot.
Yeah. It is helpful to see like what your robot is going to do, but again, it doesn't really change anything in your actual auto or what your robot will do. I'm not sure what these are. I haven't looked at these. I know hide other paths on hover is helpful in auto. When you go over one path, it'll hide all the other ones so you can look at it, but these are just more settings. So once you have, well, does anyone have any questions on what I've talked about so far or anything else? Or recommendations if anybody has like a part that they use more than I talked about that is actually more helpful.
One thing I saw when I was messing around with this the other day was that you can link different waypoints together. So that's so let's say you want to make multiple paths and have one start where the other ended. You can like link them together, and you can use that to make multiple versions of a path. That can maybe help you when you're at competition, being able to throw together autonomous just on the fly.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I wanted to go over that, but I forgot. Under waypoints, you do that under waypoints, and there'll be a link waypoint button on the bottom right of your waypoint. Once you press it, you can set a name. I'll just say sample waypoint. And like Tyler said, you can connect, like for example, the end point of one path and the beginning point of the next path, so that when you put them together or after each other on your auto, it's actually more helpful because when you go into the next path and you try to edit the starting point, it'll automatically edit the ending point of the path that is connected to it, so that you're not trying to fix one path and then try to remember what point it ended at and set the next path. So it'll like auto adjust on either way, both sides. I think we can try that. I'll make a different auto maybe. Well, for this one, it's a start point. So I'm just going to unlink that one and link this one. And then if we make a new path, okay, if you go into here and you set the start point, we can do link waypoint and go under here. And here's the waypoint, the linked waypoint that I created earlier. And it should, I'm not sure which one it connected to. It connected to the endpoint. Okay, there we go. So the endpoint automatically moved over here because I linked the waypoint to the starting point of this path, and the starting point of this path is over here. So it automatically adjusted the end point of our first path to be where that point is over here. So like Tyler said, that's helpful at competitions if you're trying to combine different autos and you don't want to have to change the end and the start of different paths.
Yeah. And I'll say we've used that to denote spots like where we found a spot that works well to intake a note on the field. We create a linked waypoint there, and then we can use that in multiple paths.
Yeah, that's definitely very useful if you want to have like different combos. Like maybe there's one starting path that you always use, starting from like the top, and you end here. And then you want to have another one that'll pick up another note. You can edit the linked waypoints so that you know this is where you need to intake and this is the best place to shoot, and keep that point throughout all your different combinations. So thank you for mentioning that. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, can you? Does the rotation target? And maybe I missed this. So as your path there is going around, the front of your robot is rotating. Is that the rotation target, or is that?
Yes, it is the rotation target. We'll set where the front of your robot is, and through that the rest of the robot, so that if you want to have a specific position at one point. Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've been playing with it on another screen, and I've tried setting it, and it won't rotate. So that's why I was like, maybe I missed another piece to that. But.
Oh, that sounds like the same problem that the other person was having.
Is there someplace in here enough settings or something where you can see what version you guys are running? Maybe since Dwayne's got his up, maybe we can troubleshoot this right now with what version everybody has. There.
I just installed a new version today.
2024 1.2. What do you have, Dwayne? What version are you running?
I have 1.4.
Yeah, I'm not updated either.
So
I've got 1.4 and it's working for me.
One thing I was messing around with is if your angular velocity is like really low, it won't rotate at all. If it's your angular velocity should be around like 540, the acceleration should be around 720, because a robot should be able to do a turn in less than a second. And if that's too low, it will look like it's not rotating at all.
Do you have the same? Do you have the same settings? Because I know these are the default, but maybe yours are different.
No, it's just gonna look. You can move on. I can. Let me take a screenshot quick, and
because I'm on 1.1 and I got it to work as well.
All good.
That's a great point. And when you're driving your robot for real and you're testing for real, if you're finding that your robot can't rotate quick enough to get to the point where you want to shoot or where you want to pick up, you would need to increase your angular velocity so that it can turn quicker. So that's a great point. I'm glad you guys brought that up, because it's an easy thing to miss, to try to figure out. We're driving too fast. You might have your linear velocity really fast to try to get to where you're going quickly. But if you don't also increase your turn velocity, you're not going to get turned in time by the time you get there. So that's something that we run into every year. This is our first year using PathPlanner, but in the old days, quote unquote, old days, last year, when we did this more manually, that would be a common thing, that we would have to tweak our angular velocity to make sense with our driving, our linear velocity.
I will also say, if you are testing and you find out that your robot isn't following the path very well, you can reduce those constraints and it'll go slower, but it'll probably get the path better. That's what we had to do, and ours is now working much better.
Tyler, did you also play with the PID constants? Or did you do any tuning of that?
We did have to retune the PID controller for both the turning of our swerve module and the driving. The PathPlanner PID was correct for us, at least so far.
And when you're tuning your PID, are you tuning that in code, or are you tuning your swerve modules? Like if you're using like Rev swerve modules, they have like a thing that you can install to edit the modules. Are you doing it in code, or are you like going straight to the modules?
We were doing it in code. We're using Advantage Scope, so that's actually been really helpful. I was able to pull up graphs of the commanded velocity and actual velocity, which makes it very easy to tune PID.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We haven't experimented with that as much in Advantage Scope. We've mostly just been using it for viewing past autos after they've been run, but I think we'll try that out. Okay, if nobody has anything else, I'll move to the actual autos. So like I said earlier, there's two parts, paths and autos. And paths, which we just created two, are used to build up your autos. So you can come over here and press plus, and you'll make a new auto. I'll name this round table auto. So yeah, once you're here, this is where you can actually preset your starting pose, and this is the one that actually does something like Tyler was talking about earlier. This position that you set with your rotation and X and Y on here is where your robot will think that it is once you enable the auto, if you want to set it to something specific. Otherwise, you can just uncheck this, and I believe it'll just run the auto based on wherever it is. And I think that's helpful. Sorry, Ashley, you're gonna say something?
No, I was just, you're right.
Okay. And I think that's helpful because of the functionality where it automatically moves the robot to the starting point of where your auto should be running if it's not already at that point. So if you uncheck this, I believe it'll just run the auto. And if you do check it, if you have that functionality enabled, then it may move your robot to where it should be to start the auto, which is helpful or not helpful depending on what you want your robot to do. But like Tyler was talking about, this is the starting pose that actually does something. Okay, and here once you're in your actual auto, it's a sequential group, so it'll run your commands, your wait commands, all your other paths that you want to combine one at a time in a row. But within that, you can add parallel command groups, whether deadline, brace, or just regular. And you can also, probably the biggest part is the follow path, which is where you actually select the paths that you want your auto to run. So for example, the path that we just created, the first one was just round table path. So you can, here, this is what I was talking about with the auto adjust. This is your preset starting pose, which when I move it, you can see it change. So it's automatically moving the robot on here to start the path over there. Sorry, hold on. If your starting pose is over here and your auto is meant to end up over there, it'll just run your robot to get to the end point. But if you're at the starting point of your path, then it'll run throughout the actual path. And then after that, you can add different paths. Like if we wanted to add the second path that we made that ended there. Oh, you definitely would not want to actually run that in the game, but this is just an example. So it ran the first path. You can see it running the first path over there and going to the end point, and then it's going to the second path to end up over there. So that's kind of how you combine all the different paths that you make and make different combinations, so that once you put them in your actual auto, it'll run them one after the other. The other kinds of commands that you can add are the named commands, so that if you wanted to put your commands between paths rather than in the actual path at different event markers like we looked at earlier, you could put them here too. Like for example, at the end of the first path, if I wanted to run the intake first and then go to the second path that I put in there, it could do that too. So like it would run the first path, do the intake command, whatever that command does, and then run the second command. And then
I have a question about that. Will it stop the robot and then run the intake and then do path 2?
Yes, it will. After you do the first path tells you that your end point is over there, so it'll stop at that end point and then do whatever your intake command is. And then once your intake command is done, then it'll start the next path and do the rest of it because it's a sequential command.
Perfect.
But if you wanted them to do, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. Like if you wanted it to go together though, like if you had a path driving up to a note and you wanted it to drive and intake at the same time, which makes sense, the same time, you could add one of the parallel command groups if you did want it to run at the same time and do like intake. And then if you had another path, okay, I'll just do example path. But for example, it would do first path, intake, first path stop, and then intake. Once intake's done, it'll do round table path 2, and then it would run intake and the example path at the same time until you get to the final endpoint.
Thank you.
If you did want them to go at the same time.
So one of the things that is important and a lot of new programmers miss with sequential commands is that you don't start the next one until the one that you're running is finished. Method returns true. So for example, on an intake, this is just a sample, but you would probably have an intake start command, and it would start running the motor and then immediately be finished, and it would keep running the motor, and then you would probably have an intake stop command. So let's say that you wanted the intake the entire time you were driving the path. You might start the intake at the start of the path, run the path, and then stop the intake at the end, because those are things where you're telling it start the motor. And it's like, okay, fine. I told the motor to start at 100%. Now I'm done, and is finished returns true immediately. But a different type of command might be something where raise the elevator to a certain position. And if your command says, I'm raising the elevator, and it only returns finished when it gets to that point, what you'd end up seeing is you drive a path, the elevator would start moving up, and only when it got to its desired position would the command say, I'm done, is finished would be true. And then you would start driving your next path. And you may not want to do that in a sequential command. So what you may want to do instead is a parallel command. So you'd say, while I'm driving, raise the elevator. And a parallel command completes when both of them have returned is finished equals true. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, those command groups are amazing. If there's any in there that you're not familiar with, go read the docs, because there's some really, really cool command groups that make it really easy to string together a lot of fancy stuff in an auto.
And then you can start to do things where you have parallel groups inside sequential groups and nest them, and you can get really complicated fast.
Yeah, and you can do a deadline group, which means that as soon as the first one's done, it doesn't matter if the rest of them are still running, stop those commands. I think the race group is whenever any of them, whichever one gets done first, I think the entire group is then told to stop and they're done. So there's some really interesting and flexible ways to do this.
Yeah, I was just going to say another thing you could do is just do a parallel race group if you wanted, like just as an example, and then put your follow path command in here for let's do example path, and then like a named command for intake. So this one would stop whenever either one of them ends, and the first one that's going to end if you don't have a specific wait time or anything for intake is the path. So then this would just run the intake until you finish the path and you get there. But yeah, you can get pretty complicated, like Tyler said, with sequential commands and all the different command groups that are really helpful. Okay, so after putting together your paths and making different combos, with which you can definitely make way more than this, different ones for, maybe you can have different paths for different starting points, going from the first driver station to the first note or second note. There's really no limit. And then you can combine all of them in different auto combinations. So yeah, it's definitely a very helpful tool, and I know more teams are going to play around with it this year. So yeah. Does anyone have any other questions or things you'd like me to look at? I'm not sure if I have anything else to say.
Can you show us where the code that gets generated lives in the code? What does this thing spit out?
Yeah, do you want to do the commit and then we can show how to pull it too?
Yeah. Let me try to get the window open. Okay. This is where I have it open with all the code for the robot that this PathPlanner project is connected to. So you can see under here what Ashley and I talked about earlier about where it shows up. So under source main deploy PathPlanner, there will be a different folder for autos and paths. So here you can see the paths that you made, example roundtable paths. And then here you can see the actual auto. So this is where they come up. So this is the path, and it'll show all the waypoints. And this is how it'll show up in there. You'll have your goal end state and your global constraints in here too, and all the different things that you set, including rotation targets, a constraint zone if you have one, and event markers. This is where the event markers show up. Like this one is just named new event marker. And it has all the points and everything. So that's where the code will show up in here. What me and Ashley wanted to show, I think, is how you can pull up the paths and autos that someone makes on their own computer onto yours, and how you can share with teammates so that everybody can contribute their autos into the same project. So I'm going to try committing the auto that we just made, the roundtable auto, onto this branch, roundtable autos. I'll save. So now Ashley will try to pull this commit that I just made and show how the actual path that I'm committing will show up on her laptop in the actual PathPlanner app and not just in the code, so that Ashley can edit the path inside PathPlanner. Before I turn it over to Ashley, does anyone have any other questions while I have this open, or recommendations for how to do things?
I think for when you want to like troubleshoot, it's one thing that my team used was telemetry a little bit. So if you go to like the hamburger menu, there's like a telemetry tab, and you can actually go to settings first. You have to put your robot's IP address in, and then you can run telemetry while you're connected to the robot, and it shows you a graph of where your robot is on the field, like what it's actually doing and what it's expected to be doing. And then it also shows like velocity and inaccuracies, and it graphs that stuff. So I thought that was really important. So yeah.
I haven't tried that much, but I think we'll try that at the next meeting. I haven't really looked into that tab yet, but that's really cool.
I didn't even know that's how it worked, so that's really good to know.
Yeah, you guys should definitely try it out because it's an important tool to use when you run into like problems.
Well, thank you.
I know we were looking at where the robot was on the field at everything using Advantage Scope, but that seems like an easier way to do it, even just from PathPlanner. So we'll definitely try that out. Thank you.
It's good to use them both because with Advantage Scope, you can like zoom in and like look at specific times and stuff. PathPlanner, it's not as specific, but it's also a good tool.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I'm going to stop presenting and let Ashley show us how the code in PathPlanner shows up on her laptop if she's ready.
Excuse me?
Yep.
So actually, a question I had was where to actually find where all of the groups are defined, because I was searching through the PathPlanner lib and also just making other kinds of different searches, and I couldn't find an exact definition of each one.
That's a good question. I don't remember where we found it, but I can definitely share the URL.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but I think the URL would be helpful because I know there's a lot of details on there, even more than probably we could share about.
Are you talking about the command groups?
Yes.
I believe those are just the same as the ones in WPILib because they're named the same, so I assume they function the same. Because WPILib also has the sequential parallel brace and deadline or whatever they're called.
Yep, and you can select that in Visual Studio too when you right-click and say New Command, and you can select which one.
Internally, PathPlanner just uses those same ones from WPILib. So if you look in the WPILib documentation, they have descriptions of those.
Yeah, and I grabbed the screen from Afomia. I did find some of the definitions here under the PathPlanner lib getting started, at least for the 4 that we highlighted, the methods at the beginning. I don't know if that's helpful too.
Yeah, I think I may have misunderstood the question, but if you mean the commands for like the parallel command groups and the sequential command groups for running the named commands and the paths, then yeah, I think Tyler's right. I think it's just the same functionality as in WPILib, the regular command groups.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else here. Yeah, otherwise, I think if you go to, here's the direct links to some of the different commands as well. This is just from the under PathPlanner lib, and then there's the API link here. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think the last thing we'll show here is just how I can see the autos that Afomia just created. Oh, are you guys able to see my screen still? Looks like it's a plain white screen.
So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I don't. Okay, let me start sharing again.
That looks better.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a poll. Right. Then coming back over here, I should see. Actually, it does not look like that worked.
Let's go back and make sure that Afomia is put. You committed, but did you also push Afomia?
I believe I did. Let me just. Okay, now I think it should work now.
Okay, let me try another poll. Oh man. Of course, right when we're doing a demo, it's not working, which I don't think we've had this issue.
No, we haven't.
Do you have to open? Never mind.
Share your screen again, Afomia. Why don't you stop sharing, Ashley? Let's see if we
Sure.
can verify that the push happened.
Yeah, now it says there's a merge conflict.
That's why. All right,
Oh.
we do not want to try to solve a merge conflict on the call.
Okay.
But I think the point is that it works just like all the other code, because you've got it saved in your repository in a subfolder, so you can commit all those JSON files, which are the path files. They're just JSON. You can commit all those files just like you would commit code, and then they would show up for everyone else.
Yeah. What we were trying to show is just what Scott said, how it works as a regular code file. And then additionally, when you open PathPlanner after that, after closing and reopening PathPlanner, you can see the actual path in PathPlanner if you want to physically edit it instead of just look at the code that shows up. Yeah, and I promise it works usually all the time, except now.
I wonder if the issue. So I did an initial commit when I first opened it, when I was trying to fix the name commands. So maybe you have to do a pull from mine first, and then push your changes.
Okay.
I don't know.
I can see how there would be a high likelihood of a merge conflict if two people are working on the same path. Fixing that JSON file by hand could be really tricky. So I think that might be a good tip, is that we should make sure our developers are never working on the same auto at the same time, because then that would create a high probability of a merge conflict. Good tip. I think that's something we should explore. Everyone should explore and make sure they understand how to have multiple developers making auto commits at the same time to try to avoid conflict.
Yes, I'll say we've only had one student at a time working in our autos branch to try and avoid that. Working in code, yeah, that's easy to resolve conflicts, but those JSON files would be an absolute pain to try and figure out which one of these points is right.
Yeah, good pro tip. Okay, so assign your primary auto developer and make sure that person's got all their work done and pushed before anyone else takes a stab at stuff.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
Oh no. I was just gonna say that when I did the initial poll, I got Aphomia's initial auto, which is just her example auto. But yeah, I'm not sure why it's not working now.
All right, last call. It's a little after 8:30, so we're at our designated time. Any final comments or questions?
I have a really quick question about like considering strategy with alliance partners. Have you guys started thinking about that, and how are you going to create your autos to work with other teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think our strategy so far has just been trying to create different auto paths for any scenario, with also the understanding that those are things that we can tweak easily within the PathPlanner tool, depending on what our alliance partners are doing. I know, Aphomia, if you want to speak to, some of the things that you've done with, because I think you created a bunch of different starting positions, different pickups.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question? I just cut out for a bit. That's why I didn't say anything.
No, you're good. I was wondering about considering other teams when you're creating your paths for PathPlanner, and how you guys are planning on doing that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like Ashley said, I think we're doing different combinations of both starting points and trying to combine paths more than make one big long path, so that, for example, if we're starting from some point and we seem to cross over the path of another team's auto, once they run their auto, if it seems like we're going to cross paths, then trying to figure out how to link waypoints, like Tyler kind of talked about earlier, so that you can attach maybe a different starting point or a different beginning path that just picks up the note, for example, to the rest of your path. So that's kind of easy to like disassemble and then reassemble autos, if that makes sense. So making maybe like shorter paths for all sorts of different scenarios that could happen, I think would be most helpful when you're trying to discuss autos with other teams, so that you have a possibility for wherever and whatever the other team is doing.
Yeah, and I think with that too, PathPlanner makes it really easy to make like on the go adjustments. So I think, once you actually see what your alliance partners are doing for their autos, you can quickly make changes to accommodate that, or, they can quickly make changes and it automatically updates in the code.
I think some general recommendations in this area is, especially in this type of game where you might have to wait for someone to get out of the way, is to allow for to enter a wait time on shuffleboard and then read that wait time when you start your auto, so that you might wait 2 or 3 seconds for someone to get out of the way. I think it's always a good idea to be able to shoot the note you have and then move to the outside of the field and cross the line, maybe go to the center and pick up one, and let another team pick up 2 or 3 in the middle. Maybe you do the really hard pickup and you get the podium one that another team might not want to try to do more because they're worried about running into the post. So you pick up, you shoot yours, you get the podium note, you shoot that one, and then you get out of the way. So I think just think of all the different ways that you could assist another robot and what they might try to do, and then try to fill their holes. Would be good. Try to avoid crossing the middle of the field. I think that's a big one that a lot of teams think, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go over here. And they don't think about, well, what's left for the other teams to go. And so try to think about how you can build autos in a way that other teams have a place to be without running into them. Because crossing the middle of the field is one of those things where you're almost guaranteed to have a collision at some point. So if you can set up your autos saying, okay, we're going to live on the left side of the field this match, and then we're going to live on the right side of the field this match, and try to keep an open area for other teams to have a place to go. And always, 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 always build a cross the line auto, because you just never know. You might lose odometry, you might have an encoder go out, who knows what might happen. And at a very minimum, you just want to be able to cross the line. We are getting points for crossing the line this year, right? Some years it's not quite the same, but yeah, always make sure you have kind of the silliest auto possible. If everything goes wrong, you just drive those wheels at 50% for 2 seconds and you at least get across the line. We had to do that one year. We lost our vision camera, and so we just had to run our cross the line auto because our robot had no idea where it was. So always build a backup just in case.
And one last quick recommendation. Sorry, I know everyone wants to leave, but if anyone's there at that point yet where you're tuning your PID, our team, we're going to work on it this week, but we found that each module has like different PID constants. So maybe if you want to tune it better, that could be a possibility if you're running into issues. So.
Thank you. I think we're going to look into that more at the next meeting, but yeah, we're definitely going to try that out. Thank you.
All right, let's call a close. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much to Foamy and Ashley, who put this together on very short notice. Very awesome. It was a great presentation. You did a great job. And I will put out a call for speakers for next week. Last time I looked, we didn't have anybody who wanted to give a presentation or host a topic. And if you're new and you don't know how this thing works, some nights we just talk. And all we do is what do people think of this? What do people think of that? And other nights we have more of a presentation like Ashley and Afomia put on tonight. So if anyone wants to host a talk of maybe it's about strategy. Maybe it's about how do we prepare strategy? What do we learn from week zeros? That might be a great talk if anyone wants to lead that conversation next week. How to build a good reveal video. A lot of teams are going to be trying to do that very soon. So if anyone wants to lead those kind of conversations, you don't have to give a presentation. You can just kind of create some talking points and keep the conversation rolling. You can sign up by going to team2052.com/roundtable. There's a link there to host a conversation. You can sign up, pick a topic, and sign up for that topic, and then come prepared with questions to kind of lead everybody along. All right, excellent. I will see everybody next week. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great build week.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's FRC Roundtable. Join us live all season long, every Sunday night. Visit the website at team2052.com/roundtable to sign up for weekly invites. In the meantime, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next week.